You disappointed with Manchester United's season?
I don't think this is the time to talk about that.
The fans are very disappointed. You're the owner of the club. Are you disappointed? Have you got a message for the fans?
It is a disappointing season for everyone, and we're going to work hard to make next season a better season.
We want Glazers and we want Glazers! We want Glazers and we
Manchester United.
Manchester United.
Manchester United.
Manchester United.
Manchester United.
Man United.
Man United.
Man United are back.
Let's go back to the 2nd of March 2003. That was the day that Malcolm Glazer, who actually never set foot inside Old Trafford, initially bought a 2.9% stake in the club for £9 million. Nobody knew what was coming. I mean, it was just an unknown man testing the football waters. But by the end of 2003, the Glazers owned 15% of Manchester United. The Glazers' takeover of Manchester United could be traced back to a horse named the Rock of Gibraltar. Now that is iconic.
Because Rock of Gibraltar is moving very hard to pass, and in fact he's roaring right away like a smart 2-year-old. Rock of Gibraltar wins the Gimcrack. Ho Choi, a big run for...
It was a champion racehorse which led to the dispute and legal battle between Sir Alex Ferguson and two of the club's biggest shareholders at the time, John Magnier and JP McManus. It was this horse that would eventually go on to change the course of Manchester United's history. It has been said that fighting over a horse does not make for a stable club. This is the story of the Glazers, the family who destroyed Manchester United.
And it's heavily rumoured that that's been bought by the Cubic Expression, which is an investment vehicle for the racehorse, gambler and currency speculators JP McManus and John Magnier, which is the Irish connection, known to be great friends with Alex Ferguson. They share a racehorse together, so this is really an interesting time.
In 2001, the two majority shareholders of Manchester United, John Magnier and JP McManus, who were collectively known as Cullimer Horse Racing Group, invited Sir Alex to invest in a racehorse after developing a great relationship. The initial deal was Ferguson would own 50% of the horse and the other 50% would be owned by Susan Magnier, John Magnier's wife. Business was going well, but in 2003, the horse became a center of dispute. Ferguson argued that he wanted not only 50% of the prize money, but he also wanted 50% of the stud fees. A stud fee is paid to the owner of a male racing horse whenever the horse breeds with a female. Now, these stud fees are totally different from the prize money earned from the races, and Ferguson wanted a cut of it. They weren't little figures either. Because of how good at racing the Rock of Gibraltar was, the studding fees alone were estimated to be worth £100 million. It was a horse who had set the world record for 7 consecutive Group 1 wins and was named 2002's European Horse of the Year. Magnier denied Ferguson's claims as their contract was verbal at the time. Ferguson took Magnier to court over the decision, and thus began a very public legal battle. He sued Magnier for £110,000. Magnier wanted to hit back and thought, what can I do? Magnier and McManus then hired a private investigator to look into Manchester United's transfer dealings, ultimately leading to a list of 99 questions being put to the board of the club. This was their plan of fishing out the shady deals and eventually removing Ferguson from his role as manager. The questions concerned several controversial transfers that were suspected to be linked to Ferguson's son, Jason, whose agency, Elite, represented the players.
Well, at the moment, it's like Jason's our spokesman for the company at the moment, and any like press or anything that was being done by him.
During the Stam transfer, you had no contact with Jason?
No.
And no contact with his...
I've never dealt with Jason.
You had no contact with his company,
No.
Elite?
No.
And did anyone at Lazio that you spoke to, anyone, mention either Jason or his company?
Never.
So isn't it strange that Lazio were paying them and they didn't mention it to you?
If Lazio has paid them, it might be strange, but I don't know if they have paid them.
But is it normal that they...
Can you prove that they paid them?
We know they paid them, yeah.
Yeah?
We know they paid Elite.
This raised questions over the legitimacy of the fees paid. Some of the transfers highlighted in the document were those of Rio Ferdinand, Diego Forlan, and even Cristiano Ronaldo. The document stated the prohibition of payments for players' transfers to agents or agencies whose members or directors have a close personal connection with the company or any officer of the employee of the company. Jason Ferguson was subsequently banned from working with Manchester United as he has a close personal connection to his father, Alex Ferguson.
United hoped their admission over the Morris fee would put an end to damaging revelations concerning the Stam deal. But we found new evidence which raises serious questions about Jason's role.
questions not answered by Manchester United this week.
BBC went ahead to air a documentary on this issue, revealing many first-team players had signed with this agency. Sir Alex didn't like this and subsequently gave BBC a lifetime ban. He avoided post-match interviews with them for 7 years. Eventually, the Rock of Gibraltar saga had to come to an end, and Ferguson settled with Magnia for a fee of £2.5 million. At the end of the deal, nobody was truly happy. Ferguson felt cheated. Magnia and McManus were searching for new investors so they can sell their stake in the club, and on came the Glazers. Magnia and McManus' 28% major shareholding in the club was transferred to the Glazers in 2005, and the rest, as they say, is history.
What makes Manchester United such an incredible team? How do they build? What's the history of building a great team?
Manchester United does is it tries to develop young players, and we have an under 18 team, we have an under 16-year-old team, we have an under 14-year-old team, we have an under 12-year-old team, and we have an under 10-year-old team. So people start very, very young, and their goal is to work their way up to be on the Manchester United first team.
This was the start for mismanagement, poor recruiting, and neglect for Manchester United. Fans already saw signs of what the Glazers intended to do with the club and started protests, but they didn't know it would last for 17 years. As at 2005, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would sign up as Patreon opposing the takeover. The same man would go on to work under the Glazers and openly support them when he was appointed United manager in 2018. It took the Glazers 2 years to gain complete control over the club. It was a carefully planned process, almost like they knew what was coming. In early May of 2005, they bought Magnia and McManus shares in the club for £227 million. This upped their ownership in the club up to 57%. The Glazers then launched a raid on other shareholders, convincing the Manchester United board to write to all the remaining shareholders, advising them to sell their shares. And in 2005, the Glazers, headed by Malcolm Glazer, would complete their takeover of Manchester United in a leveraged buyout. Let me explain briefly what a leveraged buyout is. Imagine they bought Manchester United for £100 million. This means they paid just £10 million from their own cash and borrowed the remaining £90 million. And remember, before you can borrow, you need some collateral. And in this case, Manchester United was the collateral. So immediately they acquired the club, they put the debt used to acquire the club on the club itself. Make sense? The Glazers bought Manchester United for £790 million, with only £270 million of that being the money they injected. The remaining £520 million was borrowed and immediately put on the club as debt. They have since gone on to recoup the money they invested in dividends alone, while the debt has gone on to cost the club £850 million in interest alone over the next 17 years. This is a club that was completely debt-free before the Glazers. The Glazers, the father Malcolm Glazer, and the children Joel, Avram, Kevin, Brian, Edward, and Darcy Glazer. Fans were frustrated at what they've done to the club upon the takeover. Some never set foot in Old Trafford again. Others left to form their own club, FC United of Manchester.
And it was hard to leave. It was hard to leave because supporting them that long. But then we have this, and this is so much better. This is ours.
FC United currently play level below in the Northern Premier League and remain completely supporter-owned. So, what did the Premier League do about this? A club that was debt-free was completely riddled with debt. The FA, back then, headed by Richard Scudamore, failed Manchester United and said, the most important thing for us when we met with them was to talk about their aspirations regarding television rights and collective rights generally. And there was a very positive outcome. All the FA wanted was the Glazers to play ball with Manchester United's TV rights, and that was it for them. As long as the money was coming in from TV rights, the FA gave the green light. Ferguson initially opposed the takeover before its completion, but the Glazers were able to convince him to stay and even support them. Imagine Ferguson had left, the lashback would be unbearable. So they successfully convinced Ferguson, despite initially being against the takeover. He went on to openly praise them and defend the ownership in the last 8 years of his tenure as manager. Ed Woodward, a man whose previous experience was in accounting, was now entrusted with making footballing decisions at Old Trafford. a Glazer in all but his name, advising them back in 2005 to buy the club. He was known for his bad recruitment during his time at Manchester United. After Sir Alex left, the team squad was left to rot. David Moyes was the first fall guy for Woodward, but certainly not the last. Protests would continue throughout this time, but something would happen in 2010. The club announced that they would be refinancing all of the debts brought onto them by the Glazers. Tensions grew high. This led to a takeover bid funded by wealthy Manchester United supporters called the Red Knights. They tried to buy the club from the Glazers, but fell short of the Glazers' £1 billion valuation of the club. Manchester United did enjoy success in Ferguson's final years at the helm, but that was in spite of the Glazers, not because of them. Back the manager is a slang most football fans sing all the time, but Ed Woodward did the opposite with David Moyes, threw him under the bus. Starting with the deadline day signing of Marouane Fellaini, after initially going after Fabregas and Bale, Woodward was the man that would take United from bad to worse.
Ed Woodward.
Ridiculous signings the manager didn't want. Eventually, Moyes would take the fall for his bad recruitment, and Louis van Gaal was next. A proven winner, but it was the same old story. Not signing the players the manager wanted. 3 years after he left Manchester, Van Gaal said, "Yes, I didn't always get the players that I want. That's the problem." Mourinho was the next man on the chart, another proven winner. He felt let down due to the lack of backing from his superiors, handing him the likes of Fred, Diogo Dalot and Lee Grant to catch up to Manchester City. Mourinho massively overperformed during his time at United. He won 2 trophies, reaching an FA Cup final and finishing second with the club's highest point tally, Post-Ferguson. And with his famous quote,
if I tell you, for example, that I consider one of the best jobs of my career to finish second with Manchester United in the Premier League, you say this guy is crazy. He won 25 titles and he's saying that a second position was one of his best achievements in football. I keep saying this.
Mourinho was sacked, Ole came in and sold Manchester United fans dreams. Just like Ferguson, Ole also backed the Glazers in 2019, saying, "You can't say that we haven't invested enough money. If you look at the money that has been spent, the owners have invested loads of cash and will continue that." The fans didn't have all that, and in April of 2021, they stormed the pitch, leading to the game against Liverpool to be called off. It would be the first time that a game was postponed due to protest in Premier League history, and it was all because of the Glazers. Joe Glazer then responded to the protest with an open letter promising more dialogue and communication, which the fans are yet to see. After Solskjaer, Ralf Rangnick will be given an interim role until the end of the season. And some months into the job, he said,
"As I said earlier on, the good thing about what happened, one of the very few good things is that it's crystal clear. It's not that difficult. You don't even need glasses to analyze it, to see where the problems are. So now it's only about how do we solve them. And for me, it's clear. It's not enough to do some little minor amendments, some little issues here and there, some minor cosmetic things. No, this is." In medicine, you would see this is an operation at the open heart.
This probably didn't go down too well with the Glazers, as it lasted only a few months, despite it originally being agreed that I would stay in a consultancy role. From 2013 to date, Manchester United have a net spend of £914 million on transfers. During the same time, Manchester City have a net spend of £824 million. The trophies have shown which team got the better value for money. Sometimes Ed Woodward would overrule the manager with the help of a questionable recruitment team. Other times, it would be the refusal to pay the required fee. In 2019, Ed Woodward proudly stated in an interview that he told Mourinho no when the Portuguese manager asked for a centre-back. Woodward made a lot of his signings out of panic or because of a big name to sell shirts. To show how the club is run, Jadon Sancho, who was massively underperformed, earns £350,000 a week. Compare that to Mohamed Salah, who just signed a new deal to earn £400,000 a week, or Wan-Bissaka, who earns more than Joao Cancelo of Manchester City. Even N'Golo Kante earns £290,000 a week, but Jadon Sancho earns £350,000 a week. The incompetence is blatant. United pay a premium for players who just aren't that good, or in some cases, don't play at all. And when Woodward left, it was too late. Massive wages and fees was already deep into the club's DNA. United going after Adrian Rabiot and Marko Arnautovic just confirms this. None of it makes sense. Woodward's reign at Manchester United ultimately came to an end as he resigned in February of this year, 9 years too late in the eyes of many United supporters. It is true that the club has spent a lot of money since 2013. To clarify that, the club, not the Glazers. In the last 17 years, you can count on one hand the number of times the Glazers have communicated with fans and they claim to love the club. Since Woodward's resignation, John Murtough has stepped into the role to assume many of his duties. The biggest renovation to happen under the Glazers at Old Trafford was back in 2006. Since then, the supporters have seen the roof leak on numerous occasions. And it's not only the stadium. Carrington was once one of the best training facilities in the world. Now, it's nowhere compared to the likes of Manchester City and Spurs. As of April this year, Manchester United has spent just £94 million on infrastructure since 2011. In the same time period, let's not even talk about what City or Spurs have spent. But Leicester and Brighton have spent upwards of £150 million each. They aren't taking the training ground, academy or women's team seriously. They aren't taking the club seriously. A club as big as Manchester United just created their women's team in 2018, with the previous one being disbanded in 2005. As the club stressed, they didn't have any intention of being involved in women's football at a high level. Just ridiculous. The Glazers' ownership has cost Manchester United over £2 billion in debt, interest, dividends and other outgoings. The numbers are staggering. A club with zero debt before the takeover has since spent £855 million just to service it. Without inflation, the Glazers' ownership is estimated to have cost the club around £2.2 billion. With inflation, that figure is closer to £3 billion. Change is bound to come sometime, and it looks nearer than ever because the way the Glazers are running the club is unsustainable in the long term. There will come a point where the stadium and facilities will have to be upgraded. Also, the longer Manchester United don't compete for trophies, the less likely they are to secure the lucrative sponsorship deals which they have always signed with relative ease. The Manchester United juice won't last forever and there are already signs that it's running out, with players like De Jong openly rejecting the club. The fans are a voice, and that voice is saying, we do not want the Glazers anymore. There is an appetite within the fan base for real change. There will come a point where the Glazers consider it a good time to sell the club. The supporters have the power to ensure that time is now.